Senator John McCain snuck into Syria over the weekend to meet with rebel commanders. He talked about providing them heavy arms and air support in their civil war against President Assad. Now, these aren't just empty promises. Since February, McCain and his buddy, Senator Lindsey Graham, have been pushing plans to arm the Syrian rebels. And last week, thanks to McCain's efforts, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee overwhelmingly approved legislation to do just that, to arm the rebels. You see, McCain has taken the role of Charlie Wilson in this war. You remember Charlie Wilson, right? He was the congressman from Texas who arm-twisted Congress to approve billions of dollars in military support back in the 1980s for the Afghan Mujahideen in their fight against the Soviet Union. Hollywood made a movie about Wilson and how all that military aid helped the Mujahideen win. It starred Tom Hanks and Julia Roberts. Now, of course, we know how this movie ended, or at least we know how the larger story ended in real life. The Mujahideen won, and the United States walked away from Afghanistan, no longer caring about what impact billions of dollars in new weapons may have on the country in the years to come. And then, about a decade later, a lot of those same forces we armed and trained in Afghanistan produced this, September 11th, 2001. Charlie Wilson later said he felt guilty that Congress had not stuck around to help the Afghans after a decade of war, as though sprinkling a bit of nation building on top of a heap of guns can lead to a sustainable peace. But really, what Charlie Wilson and other members of Congress learned is that the world changes very quickly, and those who we see an advantage in arming today may be the ones turning those same arms against us tomorrow. It happened when we armed Saddam Hussein in the 1980s, too. You could call it a fatal flaw with American foreign policy over the last 50 years. But here we are again with John McCain and a lot of other folks who work here convinced that the United States in its infinite wisdom wouldn't arm future enemies again, and that this time there will be no blowback. But can we be so sure? Just today, there are questions about the Syrian opposition, about how it's in disarray and unable to come up with a plan for a transitional government, free from extremist forces. And it's well known that the Syrian opposition is comprised of multiple factions, with multiple ideologies, receiving funding from multiple different sources, including roughly 6,000 jihadists fighting in Syria with the al-Qaeda-affiliated Nusra Front. So how can we guarantee that lethal aid provided to the opposition doesn't end up in the hands of these extremist forces once again? No one is questioning that Syria is a disaster, and as the death toll mounts, the pressure to do something, to somehow put an end to the violence, mounts as well. But given our history of meddling in conflicts on the other side of the world, believing that more machine guns, or more missile launchers, or more tanks may actually bring about peace, well, that's at best a hopeful belief, and more than likely, it's just a delusional one, too. In Washington, Sam Sachs, RT.